Hello, everyone. My name is Keenan. Welcome to the November 11th, 2021 weekly DXdao community call. We have a lot on the agenda today, including a discussion of the Ethereum name service, including the governance token airdrop and its grant to DXdao. We have a handful of product recaps, a discussion on Swapper single-sided staking, and more. But before we kind of get into that, it's worth noting that the recent time changes have moved the DXdao calls from 1500 UTC to 1600 UTC. Meaning for the time being, the community calls will not align with the Swapper emission launches at 1500 UTC, nor will we need to start the calls 30 minutes early bi-weekly. So we should have a more steady kind of cadence going forward here. And that being said, if you haven't already, you're now able to migrate your liquidity to the new Swapper epochs. I know we usually do that live here, but you should be able to do that now as of a bit before the call. So we'll be starting today with a more casual discussion about ENS, the grant awarded to DXdao, kind of our delegation plans and expectations of use of the token. Obviously invited a couple already, but would like to invite anyone else from DXdao or from the community that wants to discuss that, and anyone's welcome to step in at any time. Just click the little request button. But yeah, let's hop into it. I guess it's a very broad topic, but I got a couple questions about A, what we plan on doing with the tokens, and B, if there's anyone from DXdao or DXdao itself that the community can delegate to. So I'm not sure if anyone here has a strong opinion, wants to kick that off.
Well, I think first, maybe a little bit of context of how we got here. Obviously, it's been a crazy week for ENS, right? With the launch, the airdrop, the price just going bonkers, and a ton of attention to the project and the token on Twitter and whatnot. Like last community call, I'm sure a lot of you all were here. We were talking about how it looked like DXdao was not really going to get anything in the airdrop, like basically the same as anybody who had registered like one domain for a couple of years. And that kind of led to a tweet during the community call last week that got some attention, was really supported by the community. And subsequently, Nick Johnson reached out to us, kind of sent us some DMs saying, hey, you guys are actually going to get one of the integration grants. There were, I think, 54 integration grants, so basically like larger token grants from ENS in the form of ENS tokens for projects that use or somehow were like, I think, meaningful in the ENS community. And I think the key thing here is DXdao has been, I would say, like a power user of ENS and using it in a way that I think has not received too much attention yet, right? Which is actually hosting product domains on the ENS namespace and using it as a way for an on-chain organization to actually control their product deployments and websites. And this article that was just published, and Sky can probably talk more about this because he led the effort on this, I think kind of goes into explaining that. So back to the original question, Keenan, though, like, what are we going to do with these tokens? That's sort of a fresh discussion, I guess, because we didn't even know we were going to get these tokens until like end of last week. And of course, didn't realize like how crazy things would be. So yeah, I think we need to open that up, and curious to hear what all y'all's thoughts are on how we can use this. I think obviously like trying to participate in governance in some form is probably what the expectation is. Sky, curious what you think, and especially on the heels of this article.
Yeah, so mainly, and this, I think DXdao in general has an issue. Like, we are doing a lot of interesting things across governance and our products, and we find over and over again that people in the space, either don't care, don't really understand what DXdao is doing, and then also don't understand like why it might be important, whether it comes down to like creating worker guidelines for a contributed experience, or like what it means to have for a DAO to have HR, or what it means for products in DeFi to actually be owned by a DAO. And so like the actual front end is controlled by a decentralized entity rather than a centralized entity. And so these are all things that when you spend a lot of time in the DXdao community, you're like used to these things and you're kind of like, oh yeah, like of course we do this. But we, I think in general, don't do a great job of communicating it like clearly and simply to like the greater world. Now we can communicate it. Now that doesn't mean people will care. Like some people say decentralization and DeFi like actually doesn't matter that much. Like some people will tell you that. And so just like they'll say like, oh, I don't really care about my privacy. Like I don't like privacy, like I'm not doing anything bad, right? But decentralization matters when it actually matters, and privacy matters when it actually matters. And so we haven't had a lot of scenarios where whether something is decentralized or not actually matters. And we have a few examples like Uniswap, front end blacklisted certain tokens that are available to trade on Ethereum, like on the protocol, but the front end is blacklisting those specific tokens. And so that is an ability, but that was a decision made by a centralized party rather than a decision made by a community. And so DXdao could also theoretically remove tokens from a front end as well, but it would be a community decision and it wouldn't be someone like a central counterparty or a central person deciding or being forced to decide that. It would be a community decision. And so this article, I guess the goal of this article is to, and hopefully we can spread it around a lot, is to get it out there, make it capture the attention, like attached to the attention that ENS is getting in general. And like, there's a ton of people, if you listen to like Twitter spaces and stuff, where like people barely even know what blockchain is. They just know they have their name on ENS, and all of a sudden they got like $5,000 in a token, and they're like, this is super cool, right? And so people had that same experience from Uniswap airdrop, and now they're having it again. And it's people though that like aren't even crypto people, a lot of like NFT people that like also happen to have a name because they didn't want to use a long address. They have a name. Now they're getting money, and that's their first airdrop ever, right? And so there's a lot of attention around this. And so if we can then like actually communicate and attach our message of like why ENS is powerful to something like a DAO or DXdao, and how we use it, and why other parties in the space should also use it. That's the goal, basically, is to make it known that DXdao is a hardcore user of ENS, and there's reasons behind it, and it's been happening for like 2 years now, right? This is like not some new thing, and no one else is really doing it this way. Like owning your own ENS is not like that powerful. Just like owning the thing, using the ENS is what's powerful. And so I think there has been some public discussion about that. And so, yeah, it's a really interesting topic, and hopefully we can get this out and spread it, around the space more, and then we'll probably get questions. And so there's room for like a follow-up article, maybe with more details about exactly how technically these things work and how other DAOs could copy what DXdao does. And even if you want to run your own centralized front end, like through a .com, there is the opportunity to also run a decentralized version of it. And so maybe you don't only run the decentralized own version, but you could do both. That would be like a good stepping stone. And there are even other projects, I think Tornado Cash and Uniswap, like you can go to uniswap.eth, but it will get you to a front end, but I think it uses an IPNS, and the IPNS is controlled by the same central team. And so that's not really like a decentralized owned front end. And so, yeah, like the actual little details of all this stuff matter, and it will matter most when we have a scenario where like it's being attacked or trying to be censored or something like that. And so, yeah, that's the overall goal of the article.
Yeah, thanks, Sky. Maybe we can pivot into the tokens themselves now that we've gone through a bit of context. Obviously, for context, DXdao received a grant of ENS tokens, I believe. I'm not sure the current price, something around $2 million worth of ENS. And obviously, there's the discussion of what to do with it. Do we want to delegate to someone? Do we want to become a delegator? And I'm not sure. There are some other more strongly opinionated people than me on this topic. So maybe if one of you want to take it away.
Yeah, curious to hear. Like I said, this is sort of fresh, and curious to hear what people's thoughts are on this. Like my immediate thoughts are that it's going to take somebody who actually puts in a decent amount of work to understand kind of what's current and topical, and also what the political environment is going to be around ENS. I think all of us here are fairly exposed and care deeply about it as this infrastructure for DXdao, but I actually think with this level of like influence or governance power, right? Like the tokens are worth like $2.8 million at current valuation. Like maybe it's actually worth appointing somebody as a delegate or finding an existing delegate and building a relationship with them. And I think importantly, finding somebody who is actually putting in the effort that's going to be needed to do a good job representing DXDAO's interests.
Yeah, I guess to piggyback off of that, I think the ENS airdrop is been really exciting, and I also think hearing Sky talk about how DXdao uses ENS and a lot of the discussion this week, I think we forget how important ENS is as a project in the ecosystem. And a lot of the developments over the last several years, that really is based on like how the blockchain can transfer value, right? You can run financial applications on the blockchain. We can kind of do that, and that is censorship resistant. But there's a whole other vision really for Web3, kind of a decentralized world that requires like another level of decentralization as it comes to front end. And I think DXdao has been leading and pioneering in this space, but I think ENS is perhaps like the most well positioned to kind of drive and lead that forward. And so I'm hoping with this airdrop and this kind of this new governance system that there will be kind of grants for building different parts of the ecosystem to get ENS more integrated into different products and services. And so I'm interested to know what the ENS governance topics, issues, grants will be that they were kind of interested in. And I agree also with John that we should hopefully find someone that shares the vision of DXdao and would kind of push for ENS to become a better, to grow the ecosystem, kind of build things more broadly. But yeah, I think it's a huge opportunity though for DXdao to be involved in ENS governance, but really I think for ENS to grow and build more censorship resistant front ends.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. One more comment/question that I read is there was some discussion about using the tokens to kickstart ENS liquidity on L2s or Arbitram as we are deployed deeply on Arbitram. And I was wondering if there's any follow-up thoughts from those here on the use of the ENS tokens to kickstart liquidity versus delegation versus, different variables, I suppose. And if there's any opinions on whether or not we should be doing that.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting idea. I think there is like sort of this expectation, responsibility to do governance with the tokens, right? But there is also a decent chunk of them, and liquidity is also important for the ecosystem, right? And it's also important for DXdao to support Swapper. And so I could maybe imagine having some percentage of it allocated for providing liquidity on Swapper, maybe on Arbitrum directly. I would imagine if the tokens are sent to Arbitrum that they're not going to be able to participate or be part of governance, but maybe some percentage of that would be acceptable, right?
Any thoughts, Zet or maybe Sky?
Go ahead, Sky.
Yeah, I think participating, like having members of the greater DXdao community participating actively in the ENS DAO ecosystem and other similar ecosystems like that is ideal, and figuring out a way how we can delegate the tokens to maybe even a few different people would be really cool. Yeah, and I don't know if DXdao can do it itself or if it would need to be, done through a sub DAO or a different wallet scheme or something. But DXdao runs into there's always some technical reason why it's harder for us to do it, and so if we're going to ever participate and delegate tokens or something, we need to figure out the technical solution so that we can participate in these ecosystems.
Yeah, on the technical piece there, it might be interesting. Does anybody know, out of the other integration grants, are any of those DAOs in a similar position to us? I wonder. We could go look through. I'm going to pull it up right now.
I mean, that's a good point. If there's a bunch of DAOs, a bunch of projects that actually are in a similar situation, that could be a good proposal to ENS DAO to build out make it so that have them fund and build out, have a bounty or something so that DAOs can better participate in ENS DAO governance. And that's an interesting proposal to the DAO, actually.
I'm seeing POAP, Limo, ETH.limo. Yeah, also, I don't know, some random addresses that don't have names on them on Etherscan. Bitcoin, MetaMask. Some of these either maybe have new DAOs like Bitcoin, and maybe others like POAP or MetaMask, they don't have a DAO yet, but I gotta imagine it's only a matter of time before any of these projects end up going in that direction. So it might be an opportunity for DXdao to sort of trailblaze a little bit here on how to, this DAO to DAO interaction space, and actually participating as a DAO in governance of other DAOs.
Cool. And I have one more kind of broad stroke question / concern I read pertaining to the Treasury. I know Dave is here. I'm not sure if you want to come up and speak or not, but there was a couple questions about the grant and if we're including that in kind of our total Treasury value, if we're going to value that against the buyback. So maybe a Dave and or Chris kind of comment to workshop.
Well, if Dave might have trouble coming up to the stage. But yeah, I mean, I think we went through this a little bit with the swapper token and also the DMM, I guess are the two equivalents. And so I think, one, there hasn't been anything that would suggest that non-ETH or stablecoins in the Treasury would be what's used for the buyback calculations. I think long-term, maybe there's a idea on how to broaden that, but the other assets that we've had, like swapper, and I think this would be similar, are just kind of too volatile, I think, to kind of include in that calculations maybe as they get more established. And then I think on the I think that answers the question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a point here too about how some of the assets actually in the treasury, like if you look at Etherscan, I think the DXdao treasury total value is over $100 million, right? And I think the biggest one is ETH. Then you have DXD. I think ENS might be the third one now. You have the stable coins. You've got Swapper, which I think is not actually showing its value on mainnet. I think there's sort of different characteristics for each of those, right? Like obviously the ETH and the stable coins, those were funds raised for the DXdao treasury. Those are certainly part of the net asset value, if you want to call it that. When you look at DXD and Swapper, yeah, those are also valuable, but they're sort of like unissued tokens, right? They're not part of the circulating supply yet. They're not counted towards that, like on CoinGecko. I think DXDAO's goal is sort of to increase the value of the circulating supply, right? So I don't know how you account those. I think account for those, I think needs to be like a little bit different and shouldn't be seen as like equivalent to like the net asset value. And then I think similarly with these tokens, like DMG is sort of defunct now, but when they originally gave the grant to DXDAO, there was a proposal done that said, hey, these are for governance. And this was explicitly agreed to by the DXdao community, by governance. With ENS, there's no explicit agreement there, right? But I think it's kind of implicit that these grants are given not just for DXdao to go out and spend them, but to actually use them to participate in and protect the governance of ENS itself. So again, I think maybe these shouldn't be just directly counted towards the net asset value, though certainly they have value, and there may be other ways in which DXdao can derive value from them in the future.
Well, one last question here from Spicy Soup in the chat, just asking if DXdao products were excluding, I'm misreading this, but not including DXdao products in the NAV in the proposal. He was under the impression he read it as such. I guess he's asking you, Chris, if
so when the proposal passed, there were no DXdao products, tokens, and I can pull up the specific language, but it pretty explicitly says ETH and stablecoins in the treasury.
Yeah, and Sprick makes a good point. He thinks for purposes of the buyback, we should probably only include assets we are willing/able to sell. Yeah.
And just to echo, I think what John was talking about at the end there, like I think for Swapper and ENS, like our role is to govern those things, and even DXdao, right, is still in the position of kind of governing Swapper, and like that's the role of it. And yeah, it's kind of very different than I think the other tokens. But I can get the.
Yeah, although Swapper should be driving, and it will drive revenue, like or fees to the DXD token and to the treasury. But I think Swapper, it's going to be a little bit more nuanced, but there's different issues, right? Like one is that at this point in time, like the Swapper Guild's not live. DXdao is playing this role of kind of stewarding those tokens and standing up the Swapper governance itself. There's the fact that the circulating supply is still very low, so like there's a liquidity question of like, of course, like these 85 million Swapper tokens are not like their paper value is not real, right, to the DAO. So yeah, so I think for those reasons, you can't just take the value of it and apply it to net asset value. But on the other hand, Swapper is going to play a role in the value of the treasury, right? And I think eventually there could be it could be included in some fashion in a net asset value calculation.
Excellent, guys. Any final thoughts here, comments, questions on the ENS topic? Feel free to shoot those now. Anything from those of you on stage you want to finish off with?
I think it's awesome that we got this grant. I think it's great recognition from the ENS team, and I think I'm looking forward to driving the narrative, because I think how DXdao uses it is a very interesting use case that is not well understood. And big props to Sky for getting this article moving.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in a very, very important position. I think, I guess, was trying to avoid an opinion, I suppose, but I think us delegating and having a stance in governance is going to be very, very important coming into this kind of ENS governance launch. Cool. I'm not seeing any final questions, so we can move on here to the next topic. We have a couple of recaps. As I've mentioned a couple times before, we had recap calls bi-weekly before we moved to weekly community calls. So just sprinkling in some recaps every now and again to keep everyone up to date on the products. Be good. I have on the agenda here DXGov first. Ross, if you are here, it'd be great to have you. Oops, I think I just sent him off the stage. Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. I see you unmuting, but we're not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Discord is so buggy for me. Like, I always get bizarre bugs. Yeah, so it's DXgov. I think so. I gave a quick recap kind of after Lisbon and the direction we were heading in. I think I got a few comments that the write-up there was quite useful as well, and people seemed to react quite positively to it. And so I guess if you want like more of an update than that, I think there will be articles potentially coming out soon as well. And I don't want to echo what I was saying before, but like there's a lot of stuff that I can't talk about that's that you should be seeing very shortly. I think there's a lot of excitement around governance right now. And so mainly I'd kind of say keep your eyes peeled. We're working on guilds a lot more seriously now. Sort of aiming to push that out in the relatively short term. We've also been focusing quite a lot on refactoring on the DXvote application just in the past few weeks to sort of make it easier to scale the DXgov team as we move forward. Onboarding new members, obviously, it's nice to have code as clean as can be to get them working efficiently as quickly as possible. So there's a lot of work going on there. And yeah, I think generally quite a lot of excitement. And if you keep your eyes peeled in the Discord as well as the new DXgov Twitter, there should be a lot of exciting things coming up.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ross. Moving on to our second and final recap of the day, DX Ventures. Sky, if you'd be able to give a quick kind of look into that.
Sure. So the cool thing is there's a handful of things happening that show kind of the progression of DXdao itself and opportunities for DX Ventures. So there's actually touches. Sorry, Chris, your background.
Chris missed the mute button, I think.
What was I going to say? So yeah, so coming out of ETH Lisbon hackathon, there was a hack by DXdao team called Profolio, and there were actually a handful of different ideas related to kind of using NFTs to be a representation of a person or a contributor's like contributions into DAOs, combined with their DeFi scores, combined with their NFT holdings and things. And so using NFTs dynamic NFTs to really like show an easy to interpret profile for a contributor. So when that person floats around different communities and DAOs, it's like very easy to like show what you've done, but also for communities to understand who you are and what you've been contributing to and how you've been adding value, and see how that could bring, you could bring them into your ecosystem. And so there's like kind of a mission. We're talking to a handful of projects to basically figure out who could build this in the optimal way. Is it through investment, incubation, partnering, getting a handful of different people that are thinking about the same idea together? And so it's kind of a coordination game that DXdao or DX Ventures is embarking on right now to see what are the pieces that need to come together to get that made, because that would be a useful product for the entire space, including for DXdao use cases. And then there's another opportunity that we're looking at, which is like specifically for the DeFi space, a project called Double, which is focused on basically building a protocol that is solving the problem of putting together regular liquidity capital providers along with token projects that have like a single token, and combining, like matching them together in order to provide the necessary capital for a certain pair on an AMM in the space. And so that that solution, that problem has not been solved, and there are some protocols and dexes that have like single-sided liquidity and things like that, but no one that's doing it in like a scalable protocol focused way. And so it's really a DeFi opportunity that actually would fit in really well between what Aqua would do and what Swapper does. And it's kind of a middleware DeFi tooling that could become quite popular in the space. And so that's an opportunity in the DeFi space. So we had NFT space, DeFi space, and then the last one is still continuing conversations with a project more in the metaverse space. So like if we believe that more and more like these communities will exist in the metaverse, how can DXdao make sure it has a presence in the metaverse in the appropriate places where maybe it becomes a community where people can come and discover the products and the things that DXdao is doing, but it exists. There's like 3D metaverses, there's VR metaverses, and there's 2D metaverses, and so there's an opportunity with one of these metaverses where a handful of DeFi projects are already kind of building a presence in there. And so the discussion would be for like, should DXdao give a grant to basically have a presence in this metaverse and participate in this wider community? And so it's cool to see all three different kind of verticals DXdao is exploring and touching. And if there's any other opportunities that come about, please share in the chats and the forum, and that's a summary of like what DX Ventures is doing right now.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sky. That concludes our recap section. We do have a little bit of extra time here, actually. I was curious if we wanted a recap from Swapper, but we do not need to. It's not on the agenda. Just an open invitation to Zet and or Venki. See, doesn't look like coming on the stage. Oh, Zet's here. Zet, do you want to give a recap?
You throw me off?
Pardon me?
I was on the stage before now.
Throwing people off the stage. You gotta look out.
Yeah.
Get out of here, man.
He doesn't like cats.
Yeah, I don't know why. So yeah, the Swapper, we're moving forward. We're testing the MVP of the Arbitram bridge. We're moving forward on the single-sided staking. We're moving forward on what do we call it? Conditional token farming too. So yeah, we have a lot of updates coming up. Swapper Beta V7 should be done and should be released anytime now, and Beta V8 shouldn't be far away too. So yeah, that's exciting. And also, yeah, we had a new epoch just starting. Yeah, move your funds, keep farming if you want to. Yeah, we have some exciting stuff coming up.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and sorry for the kind of short notice call out. Really appreciate you stepping up, Zet. Cool. Let's move on to swapper related topics, actually, which is why I thought it would be a good idea to do a recap. And let's start with the emissions. We put out an article earlier in the week surrounding the emissions that went live a little over an hour ago. I wanted to quickly go over those changes, and it'd be great to, not sure if there'll be any discussion here, but it'd be great to kind of get it on the community's mind and then take kind of the findings to the forum. There'll be a post, hopefully early next week as well, covering the findings of this new epoch and the new changes. But before that, let's kind of go over those larger changes. And the big one is that there was an allocation shift from Arbitram to DXdao. This resulted in Arbitram moving from 80 to 70% of emissions and DXdao doubling from 10 to 20%. This is obviously because we've seen some very, very good utility and utilization of the funds from DXdao. The community's been kind of rallying behind it. The TVL has been exploding relative to the allocation, of course. So we think in the future we're going to continue to move in the right direction of whatever community is, using Swapper. So this was kind of discussed and moved through our governance process, and now DXdao has a larger allocation, and I expect that there's a serious possibility that is going to increase again in the future, but it will obviously depend on the way it's received on the chain. The other very big thing that was a big point of contention in the community is the Arbitram campaign extensions. There was lots of feedback surrounding the consistency of having to switch over to new campaigns. Having to unstake and restake was a bit troublesome to some. So the community identified some strong, consistent pairs and decided that they could be deployed at double the length. So we have Swapper against ETH, USDC, WBTC, DXD, and Curve, all against ETH, of course. Those proposals went through with double the time. So 2 epochs of emissions are out for them, and you'll have 28 days in those pools before needing to move over to a new campaign. That is live now on those pools as of an hour and a half ago. So you'll be able to stake in these longer campaigns. Depending on the reception, if it's perceived good, it's possible we could continue to extend this further, and or if received poorly, and move it back to the bi-weekly cadence. But yeah. And the last kind of fundamental change, and this isn't live in this epoch, is single-sided staking. Kind of a way, it was really debated in the community, but it's a way to have, do something with your swapper without selling it. I'm going to go a bit deeper into a forum post by Venki shortly after this. But I'm going to drop this as well. This will go over the changes a bit better. And there's a lot of per chain changes as well. So I don't mean to stifle the discussion going on in the chat here. And I won't go over all of them. There's a lot of very minor tweaking and tuning, but the kind of larger ones is that USDC against ETH has been increased on Arbitrum, as well as ETH against wrapped Bitcoin. There's been some slight reductions, ergo DAI, USDC against USDT. Lots of adjustments based on performance and on-chain data. And similarly, DXdao saw a slight reduction to WBTC and a slight increase to stake rewards. So yeah, that's kind of a recap. One big thing that we want to look at is that mainnet farms launched, I believe, October 14th, meaning that they're going into its 4th epoch. If you're aware, we deployed 4 epochs in one. So we'll need to deploy some new farms on mainnet next period. So we'll look to some discussion next week in the forum, but we need to get those proposals up sooner rather than later. So kind of paying attention to what was successful on mainnet. Was anything successful on mainnet? Having that discussion with the community in the next week here is going to be super important. Cool. And then moving on, kind of the same topic, but swapper single-sided staking. There was a great post by Venki, who would have loved to present today, but he was not able to. I'm taking over for him. But basically, there was lots of feedback in the community about the utility of the swapper token at this time, pre-governance application. People want to do something with their swapper, but don't want to pit it against ETH and risk selling it. So the single-sided campaigns kind of came about. And maybe I'll call on Zet in a moment to kind of go into the technical and when that will be. But the whole idea is to pit your swapper against itself and get some swapper in return. There are 2 proposed campaigns to start, which I will post in the chat. The first one is 50,000 swapper, and the second has 125,000 just to ramp into the single-sided staking. And they also have staking caps that guarantee a minimum APR. But it is worth noting that Campaign 2 has, to the best of my knowledge, actually slightly less than, but if all of the swapper were to be utilized, it would be reaching that cap. So it's not going to be that detrimental, at least as the emissions kind of roll out. And I believe Epoch 7 is the date, but maybe Zet, you have some more context on when single-sided staking is possible and will launch.
Not beta 7. I wouldn't even dare to say beta 8, but we'll try to aim for beta 8. I think it's better to not say exactly when. It's better for us to make sure it's out when it's ready.
Yeah, thank you.
The traditional crypto answer on everything. I think it's better to it's obviously we do have the smart contracts. We do have created the interface. We're not done with it though. So yeah, we have some work, and we're focusing on a lot of stuff at the same time right now. And we're quite a small team. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a forum post, again, put up by Venki. I'll put it in the chat, but I see there's a bit of discussion on DMG currently. Don't mean to step on any of that, but there's a poll at the bottom of that thread, including whether or not staking caps should exist on these campaigns, what the chain-based allocation should be via Arbitram versus DXdao. Obviously, it probably doesn't make sense to do this at launch on mainnet to be gas conscious. But it'd be great to have the community kind of step in there and share their opinion before these move through governance. And yeah, I guess look forward to single-sided staking soon. Trademark, as Zet has put in chat. I'm guessing it will be within the month, if I had to take a guess. Cool. That leads us to our open questions for the day. I have one, actually I have 2 here with me, but of course anyone's welcome to step up and ask anything if they'd like. But just to kick it off, let's see here. What is the current status of the Omen guild? I think we've answered this a couple times, but maybe John might be the right one to kind of give a recap.
Sure. Yeah, I'll take this. I'll break this into 2 questions, which is, what is the status of guilds in general for DXdao, and then what is the status of Omen? Because I think there's going to be a lot of commonality between guilds for each product, and maybe even beyond that, in theory. So for Omen, I think as most people have probably heard at this point, we've shifted the development focus away because we had felt that things are spread too thin and we were kind of losing momentum, and we wanted to do a couple, do what we were doing well. And so we focused on swapper and governance. And I think that strategy has been working pretty well. It's great to see kind of the momentum within those teams as they've kind of grown bigger and accomplished more faster. And I think there's a lot of exciting stuff going on around both of those efforts. So that's great to see. We haven't abandoned Omen though. And so the goal is, when staffing increases and we have the bandwidth to come back and actually deploy. I think the first priority will be to make a couple of UX improvements on the front end. I think we're dissatisfied with the experience for the liquidity provider right now. It's a little bit too confusing. Obviously, if there was a token in a guild, part of what would potentially go along with that would be liquidity incentives. And so there would be, the part of the goal would be to attract new liquidity providers. And so I think before we make big moves like that, it would make sense to have these UX issues squared away. So yeah, to summarize for Omen, it's not a priority right now. The goal is to get back to it, hopefully sooner rather than later. Like Zed said, not going to commit to any dates because that's usually just a bad idea. But yeah, we are aiming in that direction where we'll get back to Omen, and when we do, I think it's UX and then token and guilds to follow. So to speak a little bit more about guilds, like efforts on that have not stopped. Augusto has been doing a lot of good work on this lately. It should be going to audit, a newer version of the guilds contract should be going to audit very shortly, and look for more information on that in the next couple of weeks. And I think probably the first guild to launch for DXdao will probably be the Swapper guild. But that's, all the work being done around that is going to be important and able to be leveraged for Omen as well as other products within DXdao. And potentially other communities if they wanted to pick up those this governance framework and use it themselves.
Excellent. Thank you, John. And I have one more question left with me. Of course, anyone is welcome to ask any question now, not even necessarily directly pertaining to DXdao. But the one last one left with me is, what's the next event I can find DXdao at? Maybe a good Sky question.
Yeah, the next event you can find DXdao is the product strategy call tomorrow, November 12th.
or the tally community call tomorrow. I don't know if you were planning to mention that as well.
Yeah, I was going to go into that next. I think this question is
in-person events,
physical events.
Things on the radar right now are ETH Denver, ETH Barcelona, and I'm sure there's going to be other things coming up. I would expect if life starts to get back to more in-person events and less lockdown and restrictions, I would expect lots of crypto events to kind of pick up. And I would imagine that individual community members from all around the world from DXdao are going to be at a lot of different events, and we'd probably focus on a couple ones to really drive attendance, maybe sponsorship. Sky, I think you're talking with the ETH Denver folks already, right?
Yeah, and Melanie, we're already in touch with ETH Denver team. It's going to be the biggest one ever. There's the main event, which is still around like the hackathon, but there's a chance that it turns into a week of Ethereum stuff, like ETH Lisbon kind of did and ETH Paris. It's more than just a 3-day event these days. But yeah, DXdao community is preparing to definitely have a presence at ETH Denver, and there will be probably events like ETH Denver Daoist and things like around that as well. So keep an eye out. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, guys. That goes through the questions left with me. Of course, anyone's welcome to shoot any in the chat. But while waiting for that, I'll do a quick call of attention to the Tally call John mentioned. Tally Cash is going to be having a community call tomorrow, I believe, November 12th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. That will be a bit of a DXdao/Swapper AMA. And I do believe they'll have a POAP. So it'd be great to see some from the DXdao community attending there, showing some support. I think once we have some formal links or a tweet to call attention to, we'll be sharing in the kind of community announcement channel. Sky, maybe. I think Sky will be on the panel. I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, Tallycash has these every week. They invite projects that they're doing what they call integrations, but it's really like collaborations between two communities, similar to the way we've invited some other project teams to some of our community calls, and we've joined other ones such as DXdao, for example. But yeah, so Tallycash just in general has a strong like ramp up of community like interrelations as they like lead into the launch of their wallet, and they really like to vibe with other communities that have the same beliefs, like, and really stress decentralization and kind of open, permissionless, and community run. And so I think it will be great to get more intermixing between their community and the DXdao community. So yeah, everyone, please feel free to join and also participate in the Tallycash community, which is pretty active on Discord these days. So yeah.
Just dropped an invite to their channel. Chris says we should get them on this call, which I agree with. Maybe it would be fun to kind of segue their call tomorrow into an invitation to our community call next week. Sky.
Yeah, we can ask them.
Excellent, guys. Well, thank you very much. That will do it from my end. I'm not sure if there's any final questions. Oh, I do see one from Spicy Soup here. Any thoughts on the Gnosis/XDAI stake merge? Obviously, as a heavy XDAI active community. This might be a bit of a loaded topic. I'm not sure who here has the deepest kind of opinions.
Anybody?
I have some strong opinions. It'd be interesting to hear what Spicy Soup and others think as well. But there are some details where like all communities think that their tokens are undervalued, so it leads to some conflict. But in general, DXdao as a network, even though it's a great community and things, like, has not really been in a position to compete with something like Polygon. Part of it is that it's like a unique chain where XDAI is DAI bridged over from mainnet, so it's a very specific, like niche use case. And so communities joining together to become more powerful, grow actually the decentralization of that chain, do experimental things in the Ethereum focus space even before like Ethereum itself gets to it. I think there's a lot of interesting ideas there, like the actual merge of the tokens, like, and what the price is and stuff are like details that clearly cause a lot of conflict and need to be figured out. And it depends if you're thinking like financially as an investor from stake early on versus like, do you want XDAI chain to become a like part of a new experimental beacon chain that could become a really, really important, powerful chain that's like attached to the Ethereum ecosystem, but it's not its own. It's not the same as the Ethereum mainnet ecosystem, and it's like running in parallel, but it like has heavy ties. It's a lot of really interesting ideas. And so I think overall, like, some combination and growth and strengthening of the ecosystem and the chain is good. Like, the exact little details probably still need to be discussed and figured out. But I think since DXdao is a big heavy user of XDAI, and XDAI has always been this, kind of less decentralized temporary solution, but heavily, like, closely tied to the Ethereum ecosystem. It's always kind of been a temporary solution until real layer twos that everyone can use exist on mainnet. This is like putting XDAI in a position to like fill that same need, but in a much stronger, safer, more decentralized, more like new experimental way. So that's my view, but I don't know.
I dropped the links to the the initial proposal from Kopelman and the Gnosis forum, as well as like the post in the XDAI POA forum, which it's interesting. Yeah, I think there's probably far too much to unpack in the 2 minutes we have here, but I'll restrict myself to the technical, and I'll say that like, it is a very interesting idea, I think, to fork the ETH 2.0 like code bases and use that. I think that could be an interesting evolution for XDAI and could be really powerful and aligned with DXDAO's values around decentralization, but the need to have a cheaper, more affordable chain, which obviously plays a very important role for DXdao just in our operations, as well as like the other stuff that is happening with the XDAI community.
Yeah, and I'll stick to the non-technical. Know that we just hit top of the hour, so I will keep it super brief. But it's pretty obvious to me that XDAI has a bit of a branding issue, difficulty in picking up steam, and I think that this has the potential to kind of solve that, or at least move it in the right direction. Obviously, as a non-stakeholder, my opinion is maybe a bit skewed compared to others, like Luigi Lemon, who has just came on stage. Welcome.
There's a lemon on the stage.
Maybe if you want to share some thoughts as a prominent XDAI community, Luigi.
Hello. I don't dislike the proposal in the sense that having Gnosis and a rebrand and opening doors to like a broader community, of course. But the terms of the proposal are terrible as they stand, because they merely focused on the price that stake should be converted, and that is only going to happen, like the actual exchange is only going to happen after the merge, which should be like, we don't even know, maybe 6 months from now. So until then, all the work and all the incentives and all the equity that all the protocols are spending, with stake and for stake, is pretty much being capped by Gnosis for no reason at all. They are just making a low bid, and in the meantime, they are just moving all their assets like the Safe app, the Cow Swap into new organizations, and the Gnosis token might just take a dump, and stake is going to take a dump as well because of that now. So I really hate how they did this, but yeah, that's all I have to say. I just hope they change the proposal to get rid of the fucking price, and we can move on. And then when things are ready to merge, we do that.
It was an interesting approach that they chose to use the GNO token. Right, when it's very kind of unclear what that have and will have around their individual products and the other things they've invested in. I mean, it's sort of like this giant investment fund, right, which also internally runs basically a hedge fund. So it's interesting that that is also being proposed as the native token for a new chain. I was kind of wondering why they didn't just have a native, like a new native token for a chain and make it, if you want to include GNO, then allow stake and GNO to be convertible. But yeah, I mean, we'll see how the conversation evolves.
Yeah, thanks, guys, and thank you, Luigi, for stepping up here at the end. We are a bit over time, so we'll call the end of the call here. As I mentioned, there'll be a Tally Cash community call tomorrow with the Swapper/DXdao AMA and panel. So it'd be great to have some of the community there. There will be an airdrop, and Nathan seems to suggest that there could be a tally token airdrop to the community, maybe or maybe not through this POAP. So definitely worth the community's time to go get involved with the Tally Cash community. Otherwise, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you everyone for coming up onto the stage. And we'll see you again next Thursday at 1600 UTC for the next DXdao community call. Thank you, everyone.
Keenan, before you get off the stage,
Yes.
people are asking about POAPs.
I see the confusion is likely that Nathan shared a POAP. That POAP, to be very clear, is the Tally Cash community call POAP tomorrow. That will be at, 2 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, Friday, November the 12th. So if you want that POAP.
Yeah, Tally does, I think, a POAP for each of their community calls that they host on Fridays. And I think if you just join the call, then you get DM'd by a bot at the end to get it. And they've also been, I don't think it's any secret that they're planning to do a token for their product, and do some kind of an airdrop. So there's probably something to think about there as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, guys. Have a good one, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.